So how's it going? Today's video is going to be kind of chill, just kind of relaxed. We're going to talk about myself, myself, the PC. We're just going to discuss my computer that I built in 2017 and where it is, because I kind of messed around with it all weekend, messing with things, added this water cooling system, and I never really had the intent to do all this. It just kind of happened over time, like everything that happens, I guess. But that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about my PC, where it was, where it is now, things I've added, taken away, things I've liked and disliked, and where we're going. Because if you're like me and you built a PC in 2017, you've probably been sitting on an upgrade for a while. You've been looking at all the processors coming out, 8700, 9700, 9900, and you're like, I see you getting better, but it's just nothing that makes you want to pull the trigger and upgrade a system until now. Now AMD's here, and they have Gen 3 Ryzen, and things are looking good. And if you're like me, it's probably overdue for an upgrade. And I don't think you can ignore the Gen 3 Ryzen, because I think that's where I'm going. And I want to know what you guys think. If this was your PC, would you go Intel, AMD? Would you go NVIDIA or AMD? What would you do? What would you upgrade first, and why? So let's talk about what I got now, and then we'll talk about where we're going later. So let's start with my CPU. So I've always used the 7700K. It's the CPU I installed originally, never changed it, and it's worked pretty much flawlessly. I've had it overclocked to 5 gigahertz. Right now it runs at 4.7. No issues. Obviously it's a hot running chip. It always has been. But when I built this PC, the focus was gaming. I've always been building PCs focused on gaming, so highest single core clock speed has always been my best friend, trying to get the most FPS, but things have changed. I do a little video editing from time to time, and I think going forward I'm going to be looking for more cores, more threads to give me those quicker render times, because it does take a while to render a video on a 4-core 8-thread CPU, where now you got Ryzen's 3900X and the 3950, which is even out yet, but those are good CPUs. And as before, AMD always had the lower clock speeds. They still do, but they're not as far behind Intel as they have been. And it's hard to make the case against AMD, especially if you do anything other than gaming. If you do any video editing or rendering or any productivity task and gaming, it's hard to not go with AMD, because you get the benefits of all the cores and all the threads, and you're not really losing that much clock speed nowadays. For RAM, I have 32 gigs of Trident Z RGB. Not much to say about it. 3000 megahertz speed. Never had issues with it. I like the RGB color, so it's good RAM. 32 gigs is probably a little more than I need for my work situation or my video editing or even gaming, but if I'm gonna be honest, I just wanted all 3 or all 4 slots populated, so that's why. But you don't need that much RAM. The graphics card, which is probably the most expensive thing in any system, I have the GTX 1080 for the win, so it's from EVGA. And I've had this card actually longer than I've had this system. I had this card in an older system that I upgraded. I was using the 580, and I decided it was finally time to upgrade. So I got a 1080, plugged it in, and then when I built a new system, I just migrated that card over. Funny enough, I bought that card, and I think 2 or 3 weeks later, the 1080 Ti came out, so it kind of missed the boat on that one, but it's been good. Plays Overwatch and Battlefield 5, which is the games I play the most. Plays them pretty well. When the RTX cards came out, I wasn't sold enough on the ray tracing thing that I jumped ship to the RTX cards, so still rocking it. And now that Navi's here, I actually might switch to AMD, which is strange because I've never owned an AMD processor. Always been Intel because I've been looking for clock speed. And I've never had an AMD GPU. I've always had NVIDIA, especially because I have a G-Sync monitor. It's going to be hard to go to AMD, but we'll wait to see what their higher tier cards come out, how they perform, see if there's any more price drops. I might jump ship, I don't know. So after I built the system, the first thing I actually ever did was I just added some custom sleeve cables. And if you don't have custom sleeve cables in your PC, I would highly recommend doing it, because not only is it like a cheap mod that you can do, it makes everything look so much better. It's almost ridiculous. I think that power supply should come with sleeve cables. Some do, I guess, but they're almost always black. But I got some from a company called Up Here. They were like a value brand at the time, but I have nothing bad to say about them. They haven't frayed, they haven't yellowed. I got white cables. They train well. There's literally nothing bad to say about them. And if you haven't got any sleeve cables, go check them out. They might be worth picking some up. The next thing I did to the PC after the sleeve cables was I wanted to mount my GPU vertically. I always liked how that looked. I didn't really never really liked the looking straight onto a card. You only just see like the name. I wanted to see, you know, the card design. All these cards are designed nice. They have RGB, and you never really get to see it because how they mount. So I wanted to mount it vertically. Unfortunately, the case that I used, the S340 Elite, didn't have the option to vertically mount a CPU, or a GPU. A lot of cases do come out with it now, so I had to buy a mount, and I bought one from Cooler Master. And the reason I chose that one is because it came with a riser cable, and it was like one of the first ones I seen. But to put it in, I had to do some chopping, so I had to take a Dremel, and I basically cut the rear part of the case off. It was not hard, actually. It was pretty easy. Everything went together really cleanly, and you know, I actually have taken the vertical mount out, and the card still slides in and slots in how it would. Everything locks in, so yeah, I had to chop some stuff off, but everything operates the same, and I really do like how everything looks now compared to how it was originally. After that, I was just doing something simple. I painted the fans on my GPU, which is essentially a good way to kind of add some visual appeal to a fan, especially if you have like a brown Noctua fan or a black fan. And what I used was fingernail polish. I used some holographic paint. It actually turned out really well. Didn't notice any performance drop in my GPU. Everything's still working great. No thrown bearings on my fans. So as far as I can tell, if you want to paint your fans, go for it. Never had any issues doing that. And that was pretty much it. The cooling situation is kind of what changed the most over the years, last few months really. But originally I bought this system and I put in the Kraken X62, which is a 280mm AIO. And I ran that forever. I put some liquid metal on it, put some regular thermal paste. I just kind of ran it. It worked great. I had no issues with it. Kept everything nice and cool. Helped me get like a 5 gigahertz overclock. I ran 4.7 still, I guess now. And then the only reason I swapped that out is because I wanted to try an air cooler. I had an NHU12A. It was a really good air cooler. Still is a good air cooler. And I just kind of want to see what a PC was like with an air cooler because, believe it or not, the PC I had before this had 120mm AIO from Corsair, which lasted for like 8 years. So I never had any bad experiences with leaking or anything, so I just preferred AIOs, and I wanted to just test it out. And for the most part, not a big difference, I guess. The only thing I noticed is that since it's an air cooler, it does heat up quicker, so you get a lot more fluctuation in fan speed. Luckily, the NHU12A runs those A12 X25 fans, so it's pretty quiet, but I like the AIO for the fact that, you know, if you're doing some gaming or some video editing, when your load increases on your CPU, the fans don't immediately kick up. The water's got time to absorb that energy, and then if your load drops off, it can kind of dissipate it to the atmosphere without going crazy in the noise department. But after that, I wanted to try custom water cooling because I had this 240 kit from EK, and it was just kind of sitting idle, and I was like, you know what, why don't we try to put it in there, see if our temperatures drop a whole bunch. And also, you know, when I go to my next system, I want to do some hardline tubing, which I didn't do now, but I want to just see how everything kind of flowed together. Everything's soft tubing, and I'd have to say it turned out a lot better than I originally thought it was going to. Unfortunately, the S340 Elite is not really designed with custom water cooling in mind, so yeah, it works great with an AIO, but when you add like a radiator, but when you add like a reservoir pump combo, there's really nowhere to put it. So it kind of took some finagling, but what I found is that if I mounted it on the back fan facing forward, I didn't have to remove the cable covers. So like on the S340 Elite, a lot of people mount them to the radiator, but in order to do so, you got to remove the cover that kind of hides all your cable management. I didn't want to because I have some RGB behind there because I'm an RGB fiend. So I wanted to leave that there, and I didn't want to be able to see into the back of the case. So what I ended up doing was mount it to the exhaust fan on the back of the case, sticking forward, and it kind of turned out good because how I ran my loop is, you know, the water comes out of the pump, goes into the radiator, out of the radiator, into the block, and then out of the block back into the pump res combo. And because of that, the exit for, you know, my water block and the inlet for my pump reservoir combo were kind of like almost perfectly aligned. So I got this really neat little short run that kind of, I don't know, I thought it looked good, especially for like soft tubing. A little short run like that was nice and straight. And then I kind of just ran everything else out like you would see in a normal AIO, so it wasn't like visually off-putting. And it really just turned out good. It's got a good three-dimensional look because you got the water block behind and you got the pump reservoir up front. And I don't know, it just might be just me, but I like a case with a lot of PC components smashed into a tight spot with everything ran neatly and good cable management and how everything looks nice and clean versus like if you have a really big full tower case and a little like micro ATX board up in the corner. I don't know. Just me personally. What do you guys think? I like how it looks. Temperature-wise, everything is really good. The only issue really is that the cryo fluid that I have in there is kind of a bit foamy. I do see that it's kind of like a trend that should work itself out. If it doesn't, after a while, I'll probably dilute it more with some more distilled water. But for the most part, temperature is still good. Doesn't sound like it's sucking air. And we're just going to run it like this for a while until it's time to upgrade. So the big question to you guys is, should I finally jump ship on Intel? I have been using Intel processors since forever. I've never had AMD. It's looking really promising. I can't think of a reason not to go AMD unless you got something. Let me know down below. Is it time to switch to AMD? I'm like 90% there, waiting for your guys' feedback. And then other than that, it's like the GPU. Do I go AMD GPU? Do I wait to see what the new Navi cards, the higher end Navi cards are like? And is it really worth getting away from G-Sync? Because, you know, I have a G-Sync monitor. I've been pretty used to G-Sync over the years now. So it's gonna take a lot to make me want to go to AMD graphics card. We'll have to wait and see how that turns out. For the processor wise, I'm like 80% sure that I'm gonna go AMD, unless you guys can come up with a good reason why not to. But thanks for watching. This has been My Computer. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think I should change to this one. What processor route should I go? Which graphics card route should I go? And is there anything else I should add to this, or should we just focus now on upgrade? Because that'll be next. Thanks for watching.